The city park was alive with laughter that Saturday afternoon. Families crowded around the playground. Fathers pushed their children on swings, mothers held toddlers by the hand as they toddled along the paths, and groups of friends picnicked on the grass under the warm sunlight. The air carried the scent of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor nearby, mingling with the cheerful shouts of children chasing bubbles in the breeze. But on one quiet bench at the edge of the park sat Ethan Cole, a man who seemed strangely out of place in this scene of joy. Dressed in an expensive suit, polished shoes, and with a gold watch gleaming on his wrist, he looked every inch the powerful CEO he was. Yet behind his sharp appearance was a loneliness that no wealth could cover. His shoulders were tense, his eyes heavy with the kind of exhaustion that went beyond work. Ethan scrolled idly through his phone, emails and reports flashing before his eyes, though he wasn't really reading them. Work had become his only companion. For years, his empire had grown, and so had his fortune. But the price had been steep. He had no family waiting for him at home, no children running into his arms at the end of the day, no laughter to fill the long silences of his penthouse apartment. As he sat there, trying to distract himself with business, he noticed something unusual out of the corner of his eye. A little girl, no more than 7, stood a few feet away. She wore a faded yellow dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon that had seen better days. In her small hand she clutched a crumpled $50 bill, holding it tightly as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. For a moment, Ethan thought she might be lost. She stood frozen, her wide eyes fixed on him, as though debating something important. Then, gathering all the courage her tiny frame could muster, she walked up to him. Her steps were hesitant but determined. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, her voice trembling. Ethan looked up, surprised. He was used to boardroom negotiations and corporate pitches, but never to being addressed by a child in such a fragile, deliberate tone. "Hello," he replied, putting his phone away. "Can I help you?" The girl hesitated, then extended her small hand toward him. The $50 note trembled between her fingers. "Here," she whispered. "This is for you." Ethan frowned, confused. "For me? Why are you giving me money?" Her eyes welled up, but she forced herself to continue. "Because I just need a dad. Just for one day." The words struck Ethan like a thunderbolt. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He stared at the little girl, the innocence in her eyes, the desperation behind her trembling voice. It was as if time had stopped. What did you say?" he asked, his voice low, almost afraid of the answer. She clutched the money tighter, her small lips quivering. "All the kids here, they have dads. They push them on the swings, they play ball with them, they hold their hands. But me, I don't have one anymore. My daddy went to heaven. I thought maybe, if I paid someone, they could be my dad for just one day. So I saved this money. Please, sir, will you be my dad today?" Ethan's chest tightened painfully. In all his years of deals and negotiations, nothing had ever disarmed him the way this little girl's words did. He looked at the $50 bill, wrinkled, slightly torn, probably saved from pocket money or small chores, and then at her hopeful face. He felt something stir in him, something long buried under years of boardrooms, contracts, and lonely nights. A warmth, a tenderness he thought he had lost. His throat burned as he swallowed back emotions he hadn't let himself feel in years. Slowly, he reached out, not for the money, but for her hand. "What's your name?" he asked, gently. "Lily," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. "Well, Lily, you don't need to pay me anything. I'd be honored to be your dad for today." Her face lit up instantly, brighter than the sun above them. For the first time in a long time, Ethan laughed, a real, genuine laugh, as Lily grabbed his hand and tugged him toward the swings. And so began the day that would change both of their lives forever. The swings creaked as Lily hopped onto one, her tiny legs dangling above the ground. She looked up at Ethan with sparkling eyes, full of hope and anticipation. Ethan hesitated for a moment. He had been to countless board meetings, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and commanded respect from hundreds of employees, but never in his life had he been asked to push a child on a swing. "Ready?" he asked, his voice uncertain but warm. "Ready," Lily giggled. He gave the swing a gentle push, and her laughter rang out like music. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the corners of his lips tug into a genuine smile. He pushed again, and each time her laughter grew louder, freer, until other parents turned their heads to look at the unlikely pair, the lonely millionaire in an expensive suit and the little girl in a faded yellow dress. As the swing slowed, Lily jumped off and ran to him. "You're good at this," she exclaimed. Ethan chuckled. "I suppose I had a good teacher. Can we get ice cream now?" "That's what dads do after playing," she said matter-of-factly, slipping her hand into his without hesitation. The warmth of her tiny hand sent a wave of emotions through Ethan's chest. He nodded. "Ice cream it is. Dash dash dash." They walked to the vendor nearby. Ethan, used to fine dining and exclusive menus, found himself oddly nervous as Lily examined the colorful tubs of ice cream. "1 scoop of strawberry, please," she declared confidently. Ethan ordered one for himself too, and they sat together on a bench. Lily's cheeks were smeared with pink, and she laughed when Ethan got a drop of vanilla on his nose. "You're funny," she said. "I don't think anyone has ever told me that before," Ethan replied, shaking his head in amusement. "That's because you need to spend more time smiling," Lily said wisely, her little legs swinging under the bench. "Smiles make the world prettier." Ethan froze at her words. How long had it been since he truly smiled? Since he let joy take precedence over work, schedules, and responsibilities. Dash dash dash. The afternoon unfolded like a dream. They fed ducks at the pond, tossed breadcrumbs into the water, and laughed as the birds squabbled over the pieces. Lily told him about school, about how she loved drawing flowers and wanted to be an artist one day. She spoke about her mother, who worked very hard, and about her father, how he used to carry her on his shoulders and call her his little sunshine. Ethan listened intently, his heart aching with every detail. He had wealth beyond imagination, but what Lily spoke of, love, presence, memories, those were treasures he had never owned. "Do you miss him?" Ethan asked gently as they sat on the grass, watching the clouds drift by. "Every day," Lily whispered. Her voice trembled, but she kept her chin high. "But Mom says he's watching me from heaven. Sometimes, when I laugh, I think maybe he can hear me." Ethan swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in his eyes. "I think he can, Lily. And I think he's very proud of you." She looked at him, her innocent gaze piercing straight through the armor he had built around his heart. "You'd make a good dad too, you know." The words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He had been called many things in his life: genius, leader, boss, even ruthless. But never, dad. The title felt foreign, yet, somehow, right. Dash dash dash. As the sun began to set, the park grew quieter. Lily yawned, resting her head against his arm. Ethan looked down at her, her small frame leaning on him so trustingly, and he felt something shift deep inside. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about stocks, contracts, or the next business deal. He was thinking about her, this little girl who had walked into his life with nothing but a crumpled $50 bill and a broken wish. He thought about his empty penthouse, the cold silence that greeted him every night, the emptiness money could never fill. And then he thought about Lily's laughter, her wisdom, her simple joy in ice cream and swings, and realized that this single day with her had given him more than all his riches combined. When Lily's mother finally arrived to pick her up, Ethan's heart sank. He wasn't ready for the day to end. He wasn't ready to let go of the feeling she had brought into his life. As Lily hugged him tightly, whispering, "Thank you for being my dad today," Ethan knew his world had changed forever. The golden glow of sunset spilled across the park as families packed up their picnics and children reluctantly left the playground. Lily leaned comfortably against Ethan's arm, her tiny fingers curled around his sleeve. For a man who had signed contracts worth millions, commanded boardrooms with a single word, and lived in a penthouse overlooking the city, Ethan felt strangely small and vulnerable at that moment. He didn't want the day to end. A voice called out in the distance, sharp with worry. "Lily." The little girl's head popped up. "Mom," she exclaimed, scrambling to her feet. A woman in her early 30s rushed toward them, her face pale from panic. She knelt and pulled Lily into a tight embrace. "Sweetheart, where were you? You scared me half to death," the mother said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Lily hugged her tightly, then pointed back at Ethan. "Don't worry, Mom, I was with him. He was my dad for today." The woman turned, her eyes falling on Ethan, the sharply dressed stranger standing awkwardly nearby, holding the crumpled $50 bill Lily had pressed into his hand. The mother's expression shifted from relief to suspicion. I'm sorry," Ethan began quickly, raising his hands. "She approached me. She offered me this, to be her dad for a day. I couldn't just walk away." The mother's eyes widened as she saw the note. She looked down at Lily, who nodded earnestly. It's true, Mom, I gave him my money. But he didn't take it. He just played with me, all day. Ethan's voice cracked. She gave me more than she'll ever know. The mother's gaze softened as she studied him, this man who, despite his polished suit and distant air, looked deeply moved, almost broken. She sensed sincerity in his words, a kind of longing that mirrored her daughter's. I should thank you, she said cautiously. Not many people would have done that. Ethan smiled faintly, kneeling down so he was level with Lily. He gently placed the $50 back into her small hand. This belongs to you. You don't ever need to pay someone to love you, Lily. You already give love for free, and that's more powerful than any money. Her eyes welled up, and she threw her arms around his neck. Thank you, Dad, for a day. Ethan hugged her tightly, closing his eyes as if sealing the memory into his very soul. The following week, Ethan found himself unable to shake the memory of Lily. Board meetings felt emptier, deals seemed meaningless, and the silence of his penthouse grew heavier each night. He kept hearing her laughter, her wisdom, her innocent declaration, "You'd make a good dad." One evening, driven by a need he couldn't explain, Ethan visited the small neighborhood where Lily and her mother lived. He stood, awkwardly at their doorstep, holding a simple bouquet of flowers. When the door opened, the mother blinked in surprise. "Mr. Cole," she asked. "Please, call me Ethan," he said softly. "I'm sorry if this feels strange. I wanted to see how Lily was doing." At that moment, Lily came running down the hallway. "Ethan," she shouted with joy, throwing herself into his arms. Her mother watched, her initial hesitation slowly melting into something else, recognition that this man, for all his wealth and power, was genuinely touched by her daughter. Over time, Ethan became a frequent presence in their lives. He took Lily to art classes, listened to her stories about school, and even helped with homework, tasks he once thought beneath him but now cherished more than any boardroom decision. He and her mother began to share conversations too, about life, about loss, about the courage it took to raise a child alone. The three of them began to resemble something Ethan had never known, a family. Not perfect, not polished, but real. One rainy evening, months later, Ethan sat with Lily by the fireplace. She leaned against him, coloring in a sketchbook. "Do you remember the first day we met?" she asked suddenly. Ethan smiled. "How could I forget? You offered me $50 to be your dad." She giggled. "I don't need to pay you anymore, right?" Ethan's throat tightened. He pulled her close and whispered, "No, Lily. You never needed to pay me. Because being with you, that's priceless." Her little arms wrapped around him, and in that moment, Ethan realized something profound. He had spent years chasing wealth, believing it would fill the emptiness inside him. But all it took was a little girl with a crumpled bill and a desperate wish to show him what true riches really meant. Final narration, voiceover style. He was a millionaire in money, but poor in heart. Until one child's simple request gave him the greatest fortune of all, a family. Love doesn't need to be bought. It only needs to be given, freely. The final scene fades with Ethan walking hand in hand with Lily and her mother down a quiet street, their laughter echoing softly against the night air.